Hello and welcome to As Built, the podcast from Graphic Machine about architecture firms, buildings, and how both get built. I'm your co-host, Patience Jones. With me as ever is
Brian Jones,
your other co-host. Thank you for joining us. Today, we are talking about how to turn an RFP response into not just an RFP response, but a real opportunity to market the crap out of your firm.
Yes. Very delicately put.
I'm classy, if nothing else. How do you do this? Because right now, architects all over the world probably are just recoiling in abject terror that we would suggest something so gross and base. But the point is, it shouldn't be gross and base.
Mm-hmm.
So expand on that.
I mean, I think what it boils down to is looking at each of the moments in a response. And this could be a traditional proposal, or it could be a RFP that you're responding to as part of a larger commercial enterprise, where you look at, let's say, your team section as an example. And how does each team member's experience make them uniquely qualified for this particular project? And there are two ways to respond to that. You know, on the one hand, you can say this person has 10 years of experience, they worked on these types of projects, but that doesn't necessarily close the loop for a prospective client looking at this to say, oh, wow, this team is really uniquely qualified to solve this project's problems.
I think that's exactly right. And you had said something before we started recording, which is definitely worth bringing up now, which is the details are opportunities. So every detail that you put in about something or somebody is an opportunity to highlight why that makes you the best choice.
And what makes your firm unique and special? And that is also something that each element of this proposal it's important to make sure it loops back on that as well.
Because you, to a point you made earlier offline, again, I'm just repeating an offline conversation essentially, but the point that you made offline is you don't know that somebody is going to go to your website. So, you know, everybody puts the website URL in their RFP, and they should, but you can't guarantee that somebody's going to go there, and they're really not going to go there if they don't think they have a reason to go there.
And conversely, the language in your RFP shouldn't be different from that's on your website. So, you know, if you're claiming experience, if you're talking about a qualification, it should line up. It should line up and it should be included. Both things.
Yes. You should be prepared for what happens if that person doesn't go to your website or doesn't think that what you're saying is interesting or different enough. You don't know, usually, you don't know how many other submissions the readers are reviewing. And you don't know if every person is reviewing every submission or if they've divided them up among people and then they'll all review the top contenders. So it's important to not take for granted that somebody will do extra work to learn about you.
Well, and this can fall on two sides of a in-person presentation. So either you give an in-person presentation, then the RFP gets submitted, or the RFP submission is the qualifier to get you the in-person presentation. And one, knowing which order that falls in is important to how you characterize any of the work that you put in an RFP or a proposal. What is a larger thing to think about is that somebody may have a burning question that they didn't get answered or that they want to have answered. And so having, you know, details that really call out the things that make your firm special will allow a person who's really diving into those to really have something to sink their teeth into. And I think that's what this is kind of all about at a certain level.
And it helps the reviewers be able to remember what was the firm that they liked, what was the thing that they liked about you, what was the hook, because after a while your eyes glaze over.
Yeah.
It's really hard to distinguish between, you know, the firm after firm if everybody's saying the same general thing, if you can't really tell if somebody is different than another person. And yes, it is true that if you have a knowledgeable reader and you have a reputation, a firm reputation for doing a particular thing or doing it a particular kind of way, that reader will probably superimpose that knowledge onto what you've presented them. And so, okay, they know that you have won this many awards, or they know that you went to this school. But again, you can't assume it.
Some sort of review process too of your proposals before they go out, because you know what, you do enough of these and they fall into a rhythm, which is both a good and a bad thing, because you want to be able to create a system that you can then tailor to the particular project and proposal that you work on. However, you need a bit of peer review to understand what lands and what doesn't land in terms of the content that's included in any one of these, and did it really do the job that you needed it to do.
Exactly. Does the person reading it go, oh my gosh, yeah, obviously you should be hired for this project? Or are they like, yeah, so, you know, how are you different? Or I don't really understand what you're bringing to the table. At the risk of generalizing, which I'm about to do, a lot of architects like Moleskine notebooks. Moleskine notebooks are great. This is not a paid advertisement or an unpaid advertisement. They're great. But if you were to say to somebody who is not an architect, who maybe has never come across a Moleskine notebook, and you just said, what's a Moleskine? Why is that better than a regular notebook that I would buy, or a cardboard covered notebook, or a spiral bound notebook from the drugstore? The notebook is a notebook. So the argument would go.
Right.
So your firm is the Moleskine. And so you have to be able to say, this is a Moleskine notebook. Now, the reason it's better, and obviously you're not going to use the words, the reason we're better in an RFP.
Please don't.
It's implied.
Yeah.
But these are all the great features of a Moleskine. This is how it's made. This is how the paper feels. This is why architects love it. These are all the different kinds it comes in. You're not going to go on for pages and pages about every single detail about your firm, but there's a lot of room for detail, for opportunity, for expansion on you're not just a notebook.
And that leads into something that I think is really, we haven't stated expressly, which is that frequently an RFP may come with a certain predetermined structure.
Yeah.
And so if your proposal is determined only successful if its structure is in place, then it won't be successful, if the structure is changed. So by including these details throughout the piece, and that it becomes the DNA of every single aspect of what you're talking about, then if the order changes a little bit, it doesn't matter as much for its ability to be impactful, because you've worked through these details to make sure that it's coming through in every single aspect of the proposal.
I really hesitate to say this because I feel like this is a bit of architectural blasphemy, but I think this is one of those very rare occasions when the function is not following the form.
No.
I know. There are flames all around now. I'm being burned in effigy. But I do think it's true. I think if the function of what you have is solid and explains how you're different, it will be able to fit into whatever the required form of this response is, whether it's the form that you have created or the form that an organization or a company has decided is how they want to see the information.
And I think that actually, I'd like to add on to that just a tiny bit, which is that
dive into this cesspool with me. Yeah. How about it?
Which is that, the design and layout of the RFP is going to be something that's going to happen with a lot of firms, and they're going to spend a lot of time organizing the design to have a certain look about it. But don't let that become the thing that keeps you from working on the content-oriented pieces to make sure that they have all this information that's so crucial and vital to helping people make those decisions. Yes, absolutely. Make your document look professional. It should look good. It should be a reflection on your firm's design capabilities, but balance that out with the other details that are also crucial and important.
Well, I would even go so far as to say, don't necessarily think about balancing it out. Think about being as focused and passionate about the actual content as you are about the design and the format that it takes, because they're equally important.
Yep.
And it's not as exciting often. It's often thought of as like more tedious to be focusing on the wording of something or having to pull in details from a project you did 5 years ago. But it's just as important.
Yep. And the layout will get you to a certain point, but without the details and the information and the content that paint the entire picture of the story, somebody will leave with an incomplete view of what your capabilities are. And at the end of the day, that's the thing that they're going to use to make the decision. So it's super crucial.
Especially if it's a more, like hierarchical, maybe governmental or quasi-governmental project with any government or public funding. There are going to be sections that the reviewers are looking for, sentences the reviewers are looking for, words the reviewers are looking for. And if, which we've seen firms do, if you decide to sacrifice that because it doesn't fit with the amount of white space that you want on the page, you will be cut. It doesn't matter that your presentation was the most beautiful one or that everybody knows that you're qualified. It matters that you didn't do this thing that they wanted to see.
It's the scoring, and don't fall victim to it. So what are the big takeaways?
Really, details are opportunities. Every detail, how can we use this to our advantage to talk about how excellent our firm is or our firm's capabilities? And you can always dial it back if you put everything out there and you read it and you think, ugh, this is really gilding the lily and it sounds, just it's too much. You can take it back.
Yep.
You can sand it down a little bit. But better to start there than to just be, here's a notebook.
Yep.
Here's a Moleskine.
That's it.
That's it. That was very both functional and formative. Thank you for joining us. Best of luck with all of your submissions, and we will see you next time.